What is the value of playing a video game? It seems like a simple question, as you'd usually play video games for fun. But what exactly makes video games fun? Personally, I think it comes down to objectives. You know, the most basic means of progression. Objectives act as goals that you'd want to work towards completing. Whether it's finishing a difficult level or defeating a tough boss, it is inherently fun to overcome these tasks that the developer has left for you. But the thing is, a lot of games still manage to be fun even when you're not focused on the main objective. Whether it's going for a moneyless run in Spelunky, trying to 100% Kingdom Hearts 2, or spending your precious youth away by shiny hunting a goddamn legendary, objectives are meant to give structure to what would otherwise be a glorified sandbox, but would be utterly worthless without addictingly good game design. And I feel like TF2 has managed to tread this delicate line perfectly, and that is in large part due to the sheer amount of unique ways that you can play the game. Wanna flex by landing a B-hop market garden? How about taunt kills? Or perhaps disguising as a friendly is more your style. But either way, TF2 is full of mechanics and weapons that allow you to come up with your own personal objectives that you want to pursue, even if they're borderline masochistic. But regardless of how you choose to play TF2, at the end of the day, it is a team-oriented game, so ideally you'd want to work as one. Looking at you, Al. But in order for players to want to work together as a team, they need something to actually work towards. Luckily, all officially supported maps are centered around game mode based objectives, and it's these game modes that act as the glue holding together TF2. Regardless if you're solely focused on getting those epic kill streaks, or more interested in actually supporting your team whenever possible, having a centralized objective that both teams can collectively work towards or against bridges these extremes rather well. And I feel like most of the officially supported game modes maintain this casual but competitive balance rather well, because when was the last time you saw a full match of 24 players focused entirely against the objective? Hightower players don't answer that. But in all seriousness, TF2 is truly at its finest when you enter a match with veterans focusing on fragging their hearts out with teammates who are the video game equivalent of a toddler. And I feel like there's only one game mode that manages to encapsulate the absolutely chaotic nature of TF2 perfectly, and that game mode is King of the Hill. There is something so unbelievably addicting about such a simple objective. Capture the one and only control point on the map and maintain control for 3 or more minutes to win the round. Place 2 teams of idiots fighting over that singular control point combined with TF2's well-balanced assortment of weaponry, and you get what I would honestly deem to be the best game mode. But regardless of how addicting an objective is in concept, the design of maps surrounding it plays a massive role in how the game mode will actually operate. Luckily, most of the officially supported maps are honestly quite good, but instead of talking about each one in extreme detail and making this video even longer, I'm just gonna go over some design quirks that most of these maps follow. First of all, King of the Hill maps are pretty small compared to most others, usually taking just a few seconds to reach the control point from spawn. This greatly reduces the time spent playing a glorified walking simulator and increases the time spent in the fight. This is in stark contrast to other game modes where the objective can be closer or further away from spawn based on when spawns move up and or if you have a competent NG. Think about how much time you lost by walking through Mountain Lab. Second of all, King of the Hill maps are all designed to be symmetrical or mirrored, which I understand is not exclusive to King of the Hill, but you cannot deny how effective designing maps like this actually is, because in theory, it makes the playing surface of a map as balanced as it can possibly be, at least in the sense that both teams can equally take advantage of sightlines and other odd spots. And finally, there is one detail that King of the Hill does best, that being the many different routes you can use to reach the control point and beyond. And while it is true that all maps have at least some flank routes, there are just so many different ways to approach the point that it forces the defending team to stay on high alert. Because of this, you'll never experience a proper choke point, as all of these different pathways make it basically impossible to stop an attacking team from pushing forwards. Not to say that you can't defend at all, but it's certainly nice when the match isn't focused on uber percentages. So the maps of King of the Hill make the game mode incredibly fast-paced, chaotic, and hard to properly defend. To an outside perspective, that would sound like a recipe for disaster. So the question remains, what is it actually like to play King of the Hill? In all honesty, there is no singular way to describe King of the Hill in action, but from my personal experience with the game mode, I would say it leans the most towards TDM, but with an objective that serves as an anchor to promote at least some semblance of teamwork. With this, you have a bit more freedom to play whatever class, use whatever weapons, and play however it is that you want to. That's because there are only two real ways to play King of the Hill: focus the point or focus on kills. And given that TF2 players froth at the mouth for one extra kill on their strain, the latter is the more appealing option for most players. And because of that, you won't see too many players focused on sticking together and pushing as a singular unit. Instead, everyone will just be doing their own thing. Snipers just chilling out at the sightline, soldiers in demos flying around, medics watching the respawn timer. You get the idea. And there is no doubt that this leans more towards the casual experience, but not the 2-4 kind of casual experience. You see, King of the Hill just feels less serious than other game modes, and maybe that's because the match isn't focused on gaining ground against your opponent, but instead fighting for the point or racking up kills. You can chill out, work on improving whatever it is you please, and have fun. And even if somehow your team gets absolutely crushed, rounds are incredibly short, taking as little as 4 to 5 minutes each, leading to about 10 to 20 minute matches. Sometimes singular rounds of payload or attack defend aren't even finished within that time, so no matter how the actual match goes, it really shouldn't feel like a drag. To sum up my thoughts, I feel like King of the Hill represents the casual side of TF2 perfectly. Sure, it's fun to demolish opposing teams on 5CP, but sometimes it's nice to appreciate the simpler aspects of such a varied game, and that's why I feel like King of the Hill is the best game mode, as it's the perfect combination of an addicting objective and fun gameplay mechanics. But at the end of the day, that's just an opinion, because regardless of how much I enjoy playing King of the Hill, do I really think it's the best representation for TF2 in its current age? It really depends on how you view that. TF2 has a lot of competitive aspects, but since its release, it has remained a generally casual game. But it really doesn't matter what exactly TF2 is, as you should be able to play the game how you want and have fun, because that's what matters most in any video game. And sometimes, it's hard to remember that, but I will try to never forget that ever again. If you're still here watching this video, I'd like your help with something. You see, I like the flare gun. Yeah, big shocker. But if you have any crafted/signed flare guns, please send them my way. It's completely optional, but I think it would be nice to collect these personalized flare guns from this small community. And if you're wondering how to craft a flare gun, I've left a step-by-step process in the description below. But please be aware that it's only a 1 in 5 shot at getting a flare gun. I also have a few crafted flare guns, so if you'd like one, just send me a trade. But other than that, happy 5 years since Jungle Inferno. Fuck!